a kedves 12. Az utolsó témazárunkra akkor az összefoglalás, az két részletben fog megszületni, ím az első rész. So revision part 1 about Kádár regime and the change of regime, which covers a period of 1956 and 1990s. So there is no exact date for the end. Everything started that after the 56 revolution was put down, the MSZNP was already born and Kádár became the party leader. Kádár János, who was a communist from the very beginning, he was imprisoned before the 56, during the Rákosi regime, and now the Soviet Union put him to be the new leader. Of course, after the revolution was put down with the Soviet army, it became said to be counter-revolution. This is a very important term because from now this revolution became a taboo very soon. And right after the revolution was put down, retaliation started. So they started to take revenge on those who took part and were leaders. I emphasize Nagy Imre as the prime minister, the former prime minister, and Moléter Pál as the minister of defense. They were both executed, among others. About 200 people were executed, but they were the most important ones in 1958. So in the following years, from 56, people were imprisoned and executed, many of them. About 200,000 people left the country. In this picture you see as they go through the unofficial borders. And Kádár became the new leader and he had to restart everything. As defending the party and the communism in the country, the workers' militia was set up, and these people got guns and they started, of course, terrorizing people, but this terror was incomparable to the Rákosi regime's terror, so they were just looking for those who were enemies of the system. But very soon political consolidation started and Rákosi's people were put aside. And as you see, political consolidation had a social basis, because this picture shows the next year, the following year after the revolution, May the 1st, look how many people came to the 1st of May celebration. And it was not even half a year that the revolution was put down, but people went there. Of course, this was forced to go there, but this revolution couldn't be restarted. The new motto became, who is not against us is with us. So we don't want to annihilate people. We don't want to kill anyone. Just be quiet. That's what we want. Social compromise was made. If you don't care about politics, it means that we let you live. So the live and let live policy became primary, and this is what we call soft dictatorship. So there was communist dictatorship, but totalitarian system and personal cult like Rákosi and Stalin disappeared. So it was livable. And this date, 1963, is really important because amnesty came. So actually a lot of people were set free from prison who were in connection with the revolution, and discrimination of these people continued. So they couldn't get a job, they couldn't go to good universities, or they couldn't send their family members to good positions, but they could live. So this is how the compromise was made. As a next step, of course, economic consolidation came. The system understood that if you give well-being to the people, it means that they won't question your power. So what happened? Well-being of people started with agricultural changes. In agriculture, total collectivization went through without terror. So people were not forced to the collective, they were just sent to the collective. How? Actually, they were promised social care system. They could have their household farms where they could buy their things. They could sell their surplus. If they had extras, they could sell it on the market. They got pension, so old people were not abandoned. The social care system helped them. And there was normal supply in the country. Agricultural production grew, and actually it was a success. Look at the number of lands. This is the size of land, and this is from 1956 to 62 the number of these lands. It is actually shrinking to the minimum. And over 25 acres, there were no lands at all. So the number of private lands shrank. Almost everyone joined the collective. And in economy, new mechanism also came. This is not very important for us, but I also mentioned that between 68 and 78, this new mechanism went through. Some market-oriented economic decisions were made, like realistic prices and wages, but still controlled by the state. This economic change was finally stopped by the Soviets because reforms may lead to transformation, and transformation is dangerous. So this is why they finally found out that these have to be stopped. The most important agricultural products, as you see Hungary is in this line, you can compare it that Hungary had quite huge amount of goods produced. The number of flats also grew. If you compare it to the Rákosi regime 49 and 1980, housing problems get better, but I'm going to speak about it later. Cultural policy we also mentioned. Acél György was responsible for this, and there was the famous 3 Ps: promoted, permitted, and prohibited. So those cultural and artistic products that came out, they were categorized. If they were promoted, you could hear it in the radio. If they were prohibited, you will never hear it anywhere. And if they are permitted, you will be able to find it somewhere. But artists and authors and everyone applied self-criticism. So they actually knew how to make something which will be promoted or permitted. I also mentioned music and the beat culture here, and of course theaters and cinemas, and you remember the historical films and the cheap books. There were sport successes and sport for everyone. A lot of sport clubs were opened. And in education, of course, in this chart you will see that since the Rákosi regime, let's go for example the end of primary school, it tripled by 1970 how many people could pass finish primary school, and look at the secondary school also tripled, and universities also tripled. This is still not a great amount of people, but a great development. So cultural policy, we talked about a lot. Please remember that. Lifestyle is connected to culture, but this is another topic. Most important, food, stuff which people could have. You can compare it with the Rákosi regime and the 70s, how, for example, these things like eggs, number of eggs by people, I mean this means by kilo per year consumption, how it grew. Fantastic. And of course, in this chart, you can also compare it to the Rákosi regime. The percentage of the employment, those who did physical jobs and those who did intellectual jobs, their rate just developed. I mean, more and more people did administrative jobs and their number grew. In the pictures, you will see May the 1st with the beer and sausage program, and of course, twist at a home party. This is why we call, because of this relative well-being, goulash communism in Hungary. Consumer durables is also showing that the developing societies here, 60s, 70s, 80s, how many washing machines or even cars people had compared in 100 households. This number shows that it is a growing number, and this means that everyday life was better in Hungary. We were the happiest barak, as we said. This picture also says that these consumer durables are put on the tree of May. I don't remember the perfect expression for that. Relative well-being says that people started saving money for a flat, a car, or a holiday home. In the picture says, politics, who cares? We don't have, only those who don't have a garden. So people just went to their holiday homes to get rid of politics. And of course, panel, the blocks of flats made of concrete. Here is a small video about it. You can watch it if you want. So the panel. There are also other pleasures of everyday life. We mentioned the metro, the first motorway. People could start traveling. Balaton also, we have a YouTube video here. There was free education, free healthcare and pension system. So there was a social care system. A lot of benefits for everyday people. People went to the Balaton. They could travel with the red one to the socialist countries, with the blue one to the west. Not everyone got the blue one, but it was a possibility. For young people, there was the úttörő, the pioneer movement, and in the picture you see that young people are educated to be helpful and working for the socialist world. Here are some points which they had to do. KISS is the communist, the youth association of communists, which is also for young people, a kind of movement. There are also social problems. I collected them here. You remember that this is the negative effects of communist way of living. I mean, communism and the Kádár regime, low wages, no career, and such. You will be able to see this. So the social problems mustn't be forgotten. But let's talk about crisis, how the collapse started. The oil crisis put prices very high, and the worst terms of trade, I have to stop here for a moment. Terms of trade is actually the value of your product compared to basic materials, the worth price of basic materials like oil and such. And our products fell in their values, so this is why we needed a lot of loans, and to keep these high living standards, the country had to take new loans from Western countries and banks, and a circle of debts occurred. And unfortunately, this is why prices grew and wages shrank in the last period of the Kádár regime. As you see, this is how the different products' prices started to grow, and this the communist countries couldn't follow. This is also a chart about how you will get to a circle of debt. This is where they got the loans, and they invested the loans in keeping the high living standards. but also they needed the loans to pay back the loans, so that was the circle of debt. This is also the state debt of the country, as you see how it grew in the 80s and 90s. We also have to remember that the whole life by the 80s deteriorated, and unfortunately the living standards fell, so this led to the change of regime.